the big names that I noticed who were eliminated in round 1. Sweetie lost to Teliran, and I
Oh
saw
wow, Sweetie's knocked out.
Thormund eliminated to PewQ.
Wow.
I'm sure there are others I'm missing, but I just looked very briefly through players that I recognize the name of.
Oh wow, this has got to feel awful for Salugi. It looks like it's going to be mono red queuing into fairies at this point, possibly Apex fairies. But in my experience, this has been a historically good matchup for mono red. Is that still the case?
Yeah, this is more the case now with Flame Spitters. This is a nightmare for Salugi.
Everything that he's going to play with the fairies, unless he draws a card and gets instant activation of the effect, they're going to get cleared super easily by the red here.
Alright, so we'll see if that's the case, if Salugi is able to fight through this or not. I do have sources telling me that Salugi is immensely hungover right now, so we'll see if that affects his play at all or not.
I'm a bit surprised by him not starting with a mountain, but I guess he plans on doing Flame Spitter as his go-to play next turn, so...
So when your opponent starts off with a force like this, do you expect it to be something like fairies now, or is it are there a lot of other decks that are using this as forest start?
Green Rush still starts with Forest in front, for a lot of the Green Rush players. Some of them prefer to still double land to start, but Forest first seems pretty solid. So you could expect either Green Rush or a Fairies list, or a Green-Blue Apex deck.
And it looks
Yeah,
like this...
I think having seen the fairies in that Apex deck before, it might be that as well. You don't really know at this point exactly what it is.
And we do see that Flame Spitter coming down, so this is starting off exactly how Zenosora wants to. This Ground Shaker still in hand, he's going to be able to get a lot of damage in with that. This is really just going every way it possibly could go well for Zenosora right now.
Yeah, he's able to set up the double harvest, he's able to clear his opponent's creatures, and he's not under any pressure land-wise.
Yep, he might be like slightly behind on land development, but that's not even really something that this red deck has to worry about too much. We can see that this is definitely a heavy control deck, though. It has this Firestorm. We saw a couple Bold Bargainers, or at least one Bold Bargainer in the original hand.
Yeah, I like Firestorm as an inclusion here because Flameburst lost the AoE ability. I think Firestorm's a nice inclusion, even just to run a one of, just to give you that AoE option back.
Okay. Yep, and Salugi trying to consider what he wants to do with his Earthcraft here. He almost certainly wants to play it just to kind of keep that Gemsoak Fairy out of range of things like Ground Shaker if he can.
Yeah, I was almost wondering if instead he should just do the Elderwood Embrace play and then make a land to collect with the Living Willow.
Looks like he
save for the next turn, but...
It looks like he considered something like that, but didn't quite get to the same line of thought that you did. And he just drew 3 cards in one turn and didn't get to buff his fairy. This is what we saw when King Dan's was running his fairy deck, just absolutely no luck whatsoever. And we saw how badly King Dan's got crushed, and that was against a matchup that was a lot better for him than this one is.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're running as many events as you would normally see in the Fairies list, considering the fact that they have Living Willows, Sturdy Shells, and they have the Apex Predators. So it looks like they're not running Spell Rolls and they're not running 3 of Shifting Tide. So a lot of the events that you normally see played aren't in the deck.
And here we do see that Ground Shaker come down and take out that fairy. So Zenosora out farming its opponent, 5 fairy at a 4 per turn right now. But Salugi's not completely out of it yet. He is continuing to draw his fairies, draw his creatures, which is really what he needs to do. The last thing you want to do is have a handful of buffs and have no creatures to play him on or anything like that in this matchup.
Yeah, I would love to see the Flower Silk Fairy come down and possibly the Earthcraft and see if you can draw an event off that, and then decide whether you draw a card or make lands after that.
How much does it affect you psychologically, though? Like, we just saw that turn where, he drew 3 cards with no events. Is he going to go ahead and risk that and play the fairy here anyway, or is that going to affect him and keep him from making that play?
I'm not sure. If Earthcraft is what you're trying to use to proc your fairies, and you're using it without a fairy on board, it seems like you're really hindering your deck, because that seems like your main draw component to flipping the fairies, so I'm a little bit surprised to see it played without the fairy down.
I think not playing the fairy there, actually, he's going to want to play the Apex Predator next turn. I think he saved the fairy for that. He went with the aggressive land, and he's moving his Living Willow up aggressively. So that's very likely what he was going for, was a save the Feria to guarantee next turn he can play the Apex Predator.
I think I agree with that here. It definitely seems like he's going to be going in on the Apex Predator plan. And against these red decks, it is usually a lot better to go for these big creatures as opposed to the small ones and the fairies. And it's kind of a sure thing as well, which is definitely something he's looking for right now after missing so many draws with that fairy.
Yeah. He's
Yeah,
able to
I'm a
do it
little
nicely
surprised.
just by moving the Willow up.
I'm a little surprised the Farm Boy wasn't retreated that turn to try and avoid getting just traded into by the 7/6.
I think another play he could have considered was moving the Farm Boy up, not even trading on his turn, but waiting until Salugi's turn. But then you limit the Living Willow to that middle space, or you force Salugi to play land on the left side in between the wells if he wants to get to Harvest. You can force that play just by body blocking with the Farm Boy there.
Now I think we had
a. Nice.
I think there was a slight miscalculation here on Salugi's side. Oh no, sorry, disregard that. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm used to the old Apex Predator that was a little bit different size. Alright, but it looks like Zenosora is considering a Firestorm here. But he's going to go with the Bomb Slinger instead just to trade off into the Apex Predator.
I think it's double Firestorm now.
Double, okay. It still could be.
Clear everything.
That's a pretty big investment. Is that really what you're looking to do at this point?
Well, the biggest thing with the biggest thing with clearing is then you get rid of the Apex Predator snowball. He's still able to target the Ground Shaker, but it's not a 10-9.
Yeah, it seems like you want to try and starve out the Apex Predator deck, and being able to deny him a Fairy gain there would have been big, and there would have been not really that big of targets on the board for an Apex. So I feel like it was maybe the better play, but I guess he's reserving it because he knows the opponent is running Fairies and he wants to save it for Fairies.
Can't really fault him for that either. The Firestorms are just so good at dealing with that many cards, and a lot of the times the green-blue deck does end up with 3, 4, even 5 creatures on the board, which is really the time that you want to be using these Firestorms if you can. Oh wow.
Misses again.
That's crazy. Salugi's can't be feeling great after that, and really, it kind of comes back to deck building a little bit, but we can't even necessarily fault him for that. We don't know the full deck list, obviously, at this point, but we have to assume that he should have gotten the buff on a Fairy at least once at this point.
Yeah,
it's actually interesting to see the Lore Thief there, just because it is the draw 2 card. You would think that it could be something like Wisdom, same Fairy cost. It doesn't provide a creature, but it provides you an event for proccing those Fairies.
Alright, and there we see the Firestorm, which is definitely the situation he was looking for it to be used in. I can't imagine he wouldn't trade in the Bomb Slinger to the Living Willow at this point, like you were saying, just to keep that Apex Predator snowball from happening. Keep any creature off the board from that's a good target for the Apex Predator. But once again, I stand corrected. It looks like he's going to retreat and kind of leave this Living Willow on the board. Cappuccino, what do you think the reasoning is there? Why didn't he trade off into that?
Give me a minute. I'm trying to work this one out.
You guys can't see it right now, but Cappuccino's got hand on the chin, looking intently at the board right now, trying to figure out this line of play. So we'll give him a minute until he gets some kind of insight.
I would assume that you hold on to it there to try to get more efficient trade onto the 7/2 because you have Seifer's Wrath, for example. Even a Flame Burst is better than sacrificing a 4/2 creature. Or he's trying to bait him into the other forest there and then play the Bomb Slinger.
I suppose that's possible, and I don't know. I can see Zenosora definitely wanting to try to get this Firestorm off and get some extra value that way, but I still don't think it's quite worth it to make this play. Like I think that one extra creature getting hit is just I'm not sure. I don't think it's what he wanted to be doing.
Yeah, what I can gather is maybe he assumed that he would buff the Living Willow and he wanted to get early value out of his Bomb Slinger. So what he was expecting is maybe it would get Eldwood Embrace and then he could happily play his Bomb Slinger and get one of his cards in his hand onto the board, because a lot of them are reactive. So kind of just sitting on it doesn't really feel too good. And it was a way to try and bait out a buff and then have an answer. So maybe that's what he was looking for. But with this kind of buff, it's kind of unfortunate because it's not really as efficient as he was hoping for, I think.
He does still get the Aurora off the board with this Firestorm at this point, so it's not all a loss or anything like that. And he does still have this aggressive Axe Grinder as well. So he's still in a pretty good position. It was just a little bit strange to give his opponent the extra 1 Fairy last turn.
Oh yeah, he's in a commanding lead with Firestorm, or even without Firestorm, he's still in a commanding lead. But there's the spell rules that I thought might have been cut, so it seems like I guess he was just really unlucky. We haven't seen Shifting Tides though, which is one of the events that's often ran in fairies.
Absolutely, it's definitely the sort of thing to give you card advantage, but right now what Salugi really needs is that extra Fairia, which, again, I hate to harp on it, but that's one reason I'm so surprised with the plays that Zenosora has been making. When your opponent's that starved on Fairia, you're really looking for the Fairia to be able to play your cards. The last thing you want to do is be giving up your free Fairia to your opponent.
Storm Spawn's going to be really nice against red because they don't have any efficient ways of dealing with a Storm Spawn. Quite often it's just a 4-5 that ends up paying for itself, so that's going to be really nice for him to play if he can save up.
Yeah, that's the big question though, is if he can save up, because he's really starved right now, and he doesn't have a lot of, like, this presence on board can be cleared very well by Zenosora.
It's odd to me that he's playing aggressively with this Living Willow. I feel like this would have been better served defensively, just to keep him from dying, effectively. And wow. So we were talking about the Lord of Terrors earlier, and here they are. They are in this deck, despite the nerfs that they've been seeing.
Yeah, it looks like Zenosora is still running them. I don't know, maybe he didn't get the memo that it was nerfed.
It could still be just a one-off, just because there are massive cards that can come out. Having a instant removal on one of them is still really strong. It's just not as strong as it used to be.
Alright, and we do see this Frogify coming down on the Lord of Terror. I can't help but think this play is going to be too slow for Salugi, though. He's going to have to figure out some way to deal with his Axe Grinder in just a few turns, otherwise he's going to be dead to just that.
Actually, a second Lord of Terror as well. Yeah, this Axe Grinder is in a really strong position there. Even just being the 4 damage every turn, it builds up. So Salugi has 2 turns right now. Possibility that the Runin's Command gains him the life, but he's still on the back foot.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that Salugi does have, at least on this left side, is this Aurora just going back and forth. He's even just out-farming Zenosora at this point, which is something I really didn't expect to see in this game at all. I expected Zenosora to just snowball and continue dominating. So Salugi does still have a couple outlets in this game. It's just a question of if he'll be able to capitalize on those and get back into this game here. And it looks like he's trying to set up even more farming. So just trying to kind of delay dealing with this Axe Grinder for as long as possible in favor of setting up other outlets.
Yeah, I was thinking we might see the Gemsword Fairy come down and then the enchantment on the Living Willow as a draw mechanic to hopefully flip the Fairy to kill the Axe Grinder efficiently and be able to trade with the Lord of Terror, but he opted in just to play 2 creatures, which I'm not sure he's going to be able to get value out of, but it's more reliable Fairy income.
Yeah, but we do see all these aggressive creatures coming down, and even the Flame Spitter going ahead and hitting the face here. This Living Willow, it definitely isn't going to be enough to hold this off by itself. It looks like Salugi's going to have to draw into something to live through this next turn. That Flower Silk Fairy could be what he needed. Just a question of how he plays it. I think he's going to have to clear the Axe Grinder, play the Flower Silk in the middle, and then try to draw a card.
Yeah, that seems like the only way to hang on, and it only hangs on for possibly a turn or 2, even if he gains that. He's now lost Aurora on the left side from harvesting. He's moved the Sturdy Shell back in from harvesting, so...
Oh, you made the mistake of drawing already. I think what you want to do is you want to Rune's Command the Sturdy Shell, trade into the 4-2, and then drop the Flower Silk Fairy and enchantment. But it looks like he's going to just heal and see if he can come up with a better line.
Yeah, it definitely can't feel good to have to use that heal. It looks like he's going to be down to 1 HP at the end of this turn, so he's definitely going to be drawing very slim. Now he does go ahead and use this Gabriel enchantment, looks like, instead of the Ruinous Command. Obviously he used it to heal himself up. And this will let him trade in the Axe Grinder next turn, but he'll still need to draw an answer to this Ground Shaker.
So close to lethal. He can collect with the Lord of Terror, +1 and Firestorm, and that'll clear off all of the creatures and put him down to 1.
Yep, and we do see the Firestorm come out indeed. So Salugi in a very tough spot. Spell Whirl, but I don't think there's anything he's going to be able to Spell Whirl into, unfortunately. And it looks like yep, Zenosora is going to take game 1 of this match. So congratulations to Zenosora, and I'm sorry, is this a round 2 game now? I couldn't remember.
Believe it is, yes.
Okay. So Zenosora winning this round 2 game. So, as we were talking about before, what is Salugi looking to use to counter this deck now?
To counter red control, I would imagine if you still have burn in your lineup, or if you have maybe a green rush. I don't think you'll have it because he was just running green blue fairies, but a burn deck or possibly yellow control. Yellow control is pretty good against red now because Lord of Terror used to be one of the best tools against yellow control, despite them having choking, because it would kill off Windborn champions and stuff like that. So we could see yellow control be very good against red control.
Okay, Scorch, what do you think?
Yeah, the yellow control doesn't have a lot of things that are removed that easily. The Ground Shaker doesn't get as much value. Flame Spitter can still get value, but it's not as early as like we just saw against the fairies, which kind of throws off the curve of the red control. So it's just a matchup of who's better able to clear the cards.
All right, and I guess we'll be able to find out pretty soon here. So the players are selecting their decks, and we'll be able to get into this game very shortly. So once again, Zenosora will be on that red control again, and we'll see what Salugi chooses to pick to counter it.
What I was saying at the start though is I think Salugi's normally an aggro player, so maybe he'll Yellow Rush, and it's not a matchup you want to play as Yellow Rush. So hopefully he's got something else.
And it looks like it is going to be a yellow control deck from Salugi, so great prediction there, Cappuccino. So as we saw the Village Elder there, is that a common card to be seeing in these yellow control decks right now? Is that the farmer of choice?
Immediately after the patch, it's what a lot of people switch to because you're running Deathwalkers, and sacking off it seems really nice. And against red, it's not as bad as Farm Boy because you get to cycle your card, and card drawing is so important for yellow. But what I've eventually switched off is just running Deathwish Ghouls now instead of the Elders. So it seems like an old tech, but maybe he's had it been working out for him.
All right. Now, unfortunately,
Yeah,
he's not. Sorry, go ahead.
I really like the Deathwish Ghoul in there. Just because once you use, like if you use it as a sacrifice target, it's a free card.
Sure, I can see that. Unfortunately, right now Salugi would love to have just any sort of farmer. He has absolutely nothing early on, and I know that Feyria is still very important for these yellow control decks too.
Yeah, even though he knows he's playing against a red control deck, I'm not sure I would have thrown away the Village Elder that easily. He had a playable hand, but his fear was, hey, if my opponent just Flame Spitters it, I'm going to be 2 fairy behind, and it's going to enable him to set up a Gatherer. So he decided to opt out of gambling with Flame Spitters, but he ran into the gamble of not having an early game play, which it looks like it's really hurting him now.
Yep, absolutely, and it looks like he's going to be using the Wind Soldier to take out the Axe Grinder this turn. I can't see much of a better play for him, unfortunately. Do you think he will double Soul Drain the Brigand? Okay, never mind, actually.
I would have liked to see to both Wind Soldier and double Soul Drain, so I'm a little bit surprised he opted out of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what his game plan is at this point. So right now he's just getting outfarmed, which Zenosora is, perfectly happy with this board state. He has absolutely nothing to complain about. Scorch, what do you think his path is to winning this game? Like, how is he going to move forward from here?
It is a really tough start. I guess the Windborn champion can get some, like, even playing it by your own orb and using its gift on itself to move across. But I mean, even now with that Lord of Terror down, he's in a really tough spot with the way that he's drawn.
We see the Deathwalker, but the only sacrifice targets in hand are the Wind Soldiers, which are, that's not really what you want to be using for. You want to get a little bit more value out of them than that. This is just looking
Wind
really...
Soldiers are going to have better targets to kill some of Zenosora's creatures than just being a sacrifice after hitting the orb. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to go through that line of play at all.
So Cappuccino, what's your take? Is Salugi just out of this game? Or is there some way he has back into this? What sort of place does he need to be able to make at this point?
It's going to be very difficult to come back into this, that's for sure. But one of the ways is by trying to just draw into a choking or draw into a gatherer and just try and set up your gatherers and try and come back in and then slowly remove his board. I think trying to go aggro or play into your opponent at this point you're just too far behind. I would have liked to have seen the Wind Soldiers come out way earlier, but because he's trying to play so reserved, I don't like going aggro or putting out too many creatures.
It might be a little bit too far-fetched, but what do you think about Salugi dropping a mountain at this point? Really just to kind of put a little bit of fear into Zenosora, have to worry about Guardon, have to worry about these big red AoE spells.
I think it's pretty important to get Bomb Slinger's position near your opponent's deserts, so I really like that he double-landed instead. I don't think Salugi would even be thinking about Meteor, considering he's seen most of the deck and he knows it's just almost a standard control deck. So I don't think you have any fear of Meteor. Even if it was in the deck, you wouldn't bother to play around it.
Well, I was talking about Salugi playing a mountain down. Just to kind of hope to slow down Zenosora so Zenosora doesn't want to play into an AoE. Even though we can see Salugi is on a mono yellow deck, if Zenosora is worried about the potential of a Firestorm, it might encourage him to slow down just a little bit.
Possibly, but I don't imagine Zenosora playing much more anyway. He's already got the farmers established, so I think he's just going to keep farming this out until he can draw removal for the 5/5.
Alright, it looks like Salugi's going to go clear across the board to farm the well on the left side. So trying to get some kind of aggression going at least, and he's able to play down this Wind Soldier as well.
Sadly, the Wind Soldier won't collect because it's where the Windborn was moved to.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm a fan of that play either. I think moving the Windborn to the left side probably would have been a little bit better, threatening the double collect still with the Windborn. But that way the Wind Soldier would have been able to farm that well on the right side and still take out that creature.
He's going to be able to, Zenosora is going to be able to clear that if he chooses to here. He can get the Bomb Slinger in and the Flame Spitter on the right side beside the well.
Yeah, that
or he
seems
can
like...
just use the Firebomb.
Okay, it looks like he is choosing to use the Firebomb instead, just to set up that aggressive mountain and really just start pushing to end this game as soon as he can, as opposed to letting Salugi kind of have a chance to get back into this game. Now we can see that Salugi does have a Shaitan Vampire, so he's able to deal at least with this Flame Spitter, and it won't be dealing him any damage.
I don't know if you guys can see, but I have a fly buzzing around my face.
The only difficult thing that I see here with using the Vampire to clear the Flame Spitter is that it doesn't really do much in the long run. Because, like, yes, you get a 7/6 Vampire down, but it's beside your own orb. It's very far away from being the power that it could be if it's near your opponent's orb.
Sure, that's a great point. So it's possible he'll just use the Soul Drain instead then, just to keep that large creature as an available option.
Yeah. He very likely lets it live this turn just because the Soul Drain can heal him up on the following turn. But clearing it now actually probably seems better, now that he's played Kaleem, just because then the 2/2 and a Bomb Slinger or a Firebomb would clear.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for Salugi here is that this Lord of Terror is almost certainly just going to step to the left, keeping Kaleem from double farming like he really wants to.
I really like the play of Soul Draining the 2/2s to prevent a Bomb Slinger from killing the Kaleem, because
Yeah.
it's one of his only ways of coming back into the game, and it looks like it's going to be able to do him some pretty good work.
Ground Shaker here seems like a very juicy target for that last Nightmare.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you can afford it though. I think at this point you might just have to gamble efficiency and just last Nightmare the 1/5 and double collect with Kellium.
It's interesting. No, he is going to choose to play down the last Nightmare, it looks like. So at this point, it is important to note that Salugi is out-farming his opponent. This Windstorm Charger coming down is going to be pretty bad for him, unfortunately, because of this Bomb Slinger in hand. But he is slowly climbing his way back into this game. At this point, do you think it's a mistake to be leaving this Lord of Terror just here at home? Should he be moving it towards that left side well just to kind of get something going?
Yeah, I'm not sure I like how he played it there. I think it would have been slightly better to put the Farm Boy on the left and step the Lord of Terror up right one, and then make a Mountain and Bomb Slinger
The Charger.
2/4. The Charger, yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what his game plan is, but no doubt he's hoping that this Ground Shaker will just get in for a lot of damage pretty quickly here. This does allow the Soul Drain to be enough to clear off the Ground Shaker, though.
Yeah, I definitely... I think actually keeping the Lord of Terror right by the orb is really strong, because you obviously want it to kill Kaleem at some point. Kaleem having charge 2, it can kind of kite around if it needs to, but I definitely would have gone for the Bomb Slinger play on the Charger.
Yeah, the only reason I think moving the Lord of Terror at least one step is because it kind of forces that column to move. So you can kind of do this dance where you know you're both positioning or something, but it
Yep.
still forces Salugi to make that reaction. So Salugi just left Kalium on that square next to the fountain, then Zenosora would be able to go up and start collecting.
I wonder if we're going to see a Village Elder, Deathwalker, and Soul Drain played this turn, with collecting with the 3/4 Kellium. It puts them up to exactly 7, and it gives your opponent the option of trading into the 3/4 or into the Deathwalker, and I think usually you might opt in for the Deathwalker. So it seems like his Kellium would still be safe in that case.
And we see that getting down to a little bit of a time crunch here, but this Village Elder will come down, and it looks like Salugi's going to take control of 2 Faeria Wells.
So
Hopefully we see Bomb Slinger.
Yeah, Kaleem is a very, very good target for that now.
Yeah, but I can't imagine he's going to be holding on to these for too much longer, and it is indeed going to be a Bomb Slinger come down. Anytime you have 3 of a card in your hand, anytime you see an option that's this strong to be able to play, you just kind of got to take it right away. So at this point, Salugi doesn't really have a good way into the face because this Lord of Terror is still sitting back there. And actually this Farm Boy is a lot better placement than you'd expect, because Salugi would have been able to play a Desert very aggressively and play a Wind Soldier to trade into the Bomb Slinger, and double collecting in the process. But that's not going to be an option for him here. So at this point, do you think the yellow deck needs the Faeria collection from this Village Elder, or is he going to just go ahead and just trade that into the Farm Boy?
I think you want to try and preserve the Fairy, at least for now, because you don't have any better plays. I'd like to see +1 Vampire on the Bomb Slinger.
That is
Alright,
the one he
great call
chooses to
there.
go for.
Yep, and he will indeed step back to the Elder. So Cappuccino, once again, reading into these top players quite acutely. Well done there, sir.
Yeah, the only thing with this Vampire is it does kind of the same thing that I was describing earlier, where it's just sitting back. These are much better if you can get them aggressive. Bomb Slinger is in still just as good of a position to trade off for this Vampire.
Absolutely, and we see these Farm Boys are just getting absolutely everywhere on the board right now. Royal Judge is an interesting draw here, though. It allows him to trade into this Bomb Slinger pretty efficiently with a punishment, while the Vampire goes in and takes out the Farm Boy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Royal Judge is not a card you typically include into yellow control. I guess he might be running 3 Deathwalkers, and he was struggling with enough food for the Deathwalker to eat, so he decided to include it, but it's certainly not standard. It's also really nice with Chargers, though, for the safeguard to get 4 attack.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a pretty strong option for some of these. It's great to see the innovation that these players come out with, and Royal Judge seems like a really innocuous card. You see it here and there, especially when Steam Forged Enforcers are pretty common. But
Yeah.
it does seem like a pretty good fit in this deck.
And it may just be an inclusion as a surprise card. When you're going through your deck building, you have basically a standard, maybe 28 cards that you know are going to be in, and then some variation based on that. And then you just are looking for something to surprise an opponent.
Yeah,
Looks like
it's definitely really clever because I guess it's right. You should assume that there's going to be a lot more neutral cards, or there'll at least be more neutral cards than you expect because of the fact that you can't be running any more than 3 cards of a copy within your 3 deck choices. So
Yep.
it's definitely really smart.
and we can see Salugi playing very conservatively here. He chose to step back the Vampire instead of going up and taking out that Farm Boy. I think that he thought that Zenosora leaving it up was kind of a bait into Ground Shaker or something like that. So he chose not to do that, but instead he played into Bomb Slinger by doing so. Alright, this Road Judge is finally going to come down. Looks like it's going to deal with this Bomb Slinger as well. It looks like the Ground Shaker, the Zenosora, was bluffing before. It did come into hand now, and he will go ahead and use that to take a very aggressive stance in this game, just putting it right next to his opponent's face, dealing with that Royal Judge body, and it looks like this Lord of Terror is going to be posturing to deal with the Windstorm Charger as well. I doubt that it'll be able to chase it down, but it'll at least start taking control of Etheria well, which is something that I mentioned I would have liked to see it doing a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that he's been so aggro with Ground Shakers and with kind of how he's been playing it out. Typically, when you see red versus yellow, red can win just from farming out the game and setting up to triple collect and just board clearing yellow every time they put stuff on the board. But he's taken a more aggressive approach of just trying to kill his creatures and trying to hit face as much as possible.
Yeah, I really like that with the Ground Shakers. I find that a lot of games, if I can get even just one hit to the orb with the Ground Shaker, it makes a massive difference in the pace of the game.
Yeah, but it looks like this is going to be that one hit for the Ground Shaker that you were looking for, unless he wants to trade into the Deathwalker instead. Which play do you think you guys would pick? Which one has more merit?
I think going for the orb is better here. If Salugi was sitting on a bit higher of a Faria pool, where Last Nightmare was going to be a possibility, I think I maybe trade. But you also don't have a better option. Now he draws the Lord of Terror, but before he didn't have anything else to play that would block the Deathwalker, so the Ground Shaker could get possibly another hit in, or trade and play something in place of the Ground Shaker. So
Yeah, I think prior to drawing the Lord of Terror, I would have traded because you run the risk of one, he's running cards like Royal Judge, he might be running safeguards, which would be the way you lose this. But two, he can just step over, collect +1 and Last Nightmare, and you haven't seen many Last Nightmares out of him. So you're playing into, one of those two options, and without the Lord of Terror, that would have been a gamble. With the Lord of Terror, it makes a bit more sense to hit face. It's just I think I would have drawn first.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
you definitely want that other option before you make that decision.
yeah, drawing first is one thing that we try to pound into players all the time. We always tell you have to draw first unless you're playing something like Fairies where you have a reason to wait to draw. But drawing first always lets you know what options you have and lets you make a more informed decision in the game. So if you're a new player trying to pick up this sort of game, that's definitely one thing to watch out for. Is always draw as soon as you can when you realize you're going to be drawing later in your turn.
Looks like he wants to push the Deathwalker into the Lord of Terror. I'm not sure I like that much, though. Oh, this is actually more clever. Okay, I like this play.
Okay, so by moving that Lord of Terror back, what's that open up exactly? What is he hoping his opponent will make a misplay from that, or because I only see moving it back, and while it can't trade off for the Deathwalker, it's still threatening a lot of damage next turn.
It's a little bit more options because it gives you the chance of using Last Nightmare and Deathwalker to kill the 1/5, but more importantly, if your opponent had played another creature, you would have more options of playing around it and more time to draw like a Choking Sand or something. Unfortunately, he can't really get to the Ground Shaker though.
I'd almost be really tempted to make a very aggressive play here. If you Choking Sands the Lord of Terror that's the closer to Zenosora, you could fly over and take out the Farm Boy, as well as Choking Sands on the Lord of Terror back home. Or sorry, as well as trading into that. Which sets you up for Last Nightmare the following turn, and it kind of just strips your opponent of any Favoria farming that they had. We can see that obviously he didn't make that play. He's going to go ahead and play Garudon here and just really start getting a lot of damage in, threatening lethal next turn actually.
Yeah, and especially Salugi just having used a Last Nightmare on the Ground Shaker. He's 100% free to go with this Carrot in here.
Yeah, Salugi, no Favoria to deal with this whatsoever. It looks like the 1/5 is going to trade into the Windborn champion though. Yeah, that makes it much harder for the Garudon to be dealt with and continues to threaten as much damage as he possibly can. What options does Salugi have at this point? Is there anything to get him out of this? He obviously is going to have to deal with Garudon at some point. But in the meantime, he just needs to get at least 1 damage off the table.
Yeah, it's difficult because I think he's going to need the Feria in further turns, but he needs to move this Deathwalker in to have any chance of dealing with Garudon.
Yeah, I think I would like to see the follower come down, make a land, and then choke the 1/5 and just step the Deathwalker 1 step closer to Garudon.
Yep.
Well, he's actually not even going to trade off into that Lord of Terror, so it looks like he's trying to gum up the board as much as he can around his board and only making it so only 1 creature can attack his face this turn. This can backfire pretty heavily, as we can see,
Firebomb will be lethal.
Yep, any removal spell at that point was lethal. So it looks like Zenosora is going to take it. So congratulations to him for winning round 2 of the tournament and advancing to the round of 16.
Very strong play with the red control there.
All right.
Yeah, and that's kind of what